Hi, today we are going to be talking about customary or standard units of measure. Those are things that involve our inches, feet, yards, miles. It could also be things like for volume and weight, such as gallons, quarts, pints, cups, or tons, pounds, and ounces. That information, a lot of that is found on your star chart. So you can see the different customary. The other form of measurement would be metric, which is in this column. And that's our things like centimeters and liters and kilograms, things like that. The customary or standard units of measure is mainly what the United States uses for a lot of different things. So we have to be able to use a ruler correctly so that we can measure in those customary units. On our star chart, there are two different rulers, and one of them is in centimeters. That's on this side, and it says centimeters here, which we can turn and then use right here. On the other side, where we have our formulas like for triangle, the area of a triangle, the area of a rectangle, parallelogram, and trapezoid, as well as our volume formula, you'll find the inches ruler. It's on the other side. Now, if I notice, I'm going to stay here with the inches. I start at 0 and we go to 8 on here. Obviously, there's longer rulers that will measure longer things, but for what we will need, it's probably going to be good for here. There's lots of different little lines in between, and we're going to talk about what those mean and how we can use them in order to measure. Okay, so this right here would be considered an inch. So we're going to kind of zoom in and look at just 1 inch, whether it be from here to here, here to here, here to here. It doesn't matter. It's the same unit of measure. It's 1 inch. And we're going to zoom in. We're actually going to create what we call a Texas inch, because in Texas, everything is bigger. So we are going to create a larger version of this Texas inch using a strip of paper. And you are welcome to follow along to create your own Texas inch so that you have that in your notebook as well. So I know this isn't really an inch, but as I said, we've zoomed in, and so we're going to call this our inch. And so I'm going to make a mark that here at the very beginning is 0 inches. Okay, so that's the 0, that's my beginning. And down here on the other very, very end is the 1 inch. So it's going to represent 1 inch for that. And so if I look back on the regular star chart and the inch that we have, I notice that there are several lines. And if I actually count the sections, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections in between. And so we are going to create that same type of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and carefully fold it in half. And when I fold it in half, I'll make that crease. And how many sections do we have? Well, we have 2 sections here. And I'm actually going to draw a line where that crease is, okay, so that we have now 2 sections. At this time, I could also even call that halfway in between. So I'm going to say this is 1/2. Okay, so I've got 1/2 here. So I'm going to refold it back to where I was. Okay, and I'm actually going to fold it again. And so when I do that, now I have 4 sections, right? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I split this half in half again. And so now I'm going to make a mark here, a little bit shorter than the half mark. And I've got those marks there. And if I notice, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. So one of those sections would be 1/4. This section, even though it's a half, it's also equivalent or equal to 2/4. So we have 1/4 and 2/4 there. Those are the same equivalent fractions. And then if I go over one more section, I've gone over 1, 2, 3 out of the 4, so this is going to be equal to 3/4. And then, of course, 4/4 would be equal to 1/2. All right, so I'm going to fold it one more time. So I'm going to fold it back to where I had it in half, fold it again, and then I'm going to take it and fold it one more time. So now it's even smaller. How many sections do you think we're going to have? Well, since I split it in half again, that means I broke this up in half. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total sections. And so now I'm going to make another line, but I'm going to make this one even a little bit shorter than the others. On each one of those creases. And so now I have 8 sections. So if I have 8 sections, this would be 1/8. Well, this is 1/4, but it's also 2 sections, so it's going to be equivalent to 2/8. 3 sections would be 3/8. Well, this would be 4/8, but it's also 2/4, which is equivalent to 1/2. So I'm going to add my 4/8 as well down there at the bottom. I've got 5/8 here, 6/8, but if I simplify that, that's equivalent to 3/4, and then I have 7/8. This in turn would be 8/8, just like it was 4/4, okay, or even 2/2 would give us the 1 as well. So if I take a look, now I have those 8 lines, just like I would on my star chart or a ruler. I've marked them, some of them several times, with the different equivalent fractions, but we always want to go with the most simplistic or simplified version. So I would say 1/8 for this one, 1/4, 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, 3/4, and 7/8. Those are the ones that I would use when I go to measure something. Okay, so now we can look at that, and we could actually use it here because it's going to be the same thing. I've got 1/8, 2/8, which is a fourth, 3/8, 4/8, which is a half, 5/8, 6/8, which is 3/4, 7/8, and then the 1/2 or 8/8. Okay, so if I'm over here, it's going to be 1 and 3/4 because I'm already over 1 full and then 3/4 more. All right, so let's practice a little bit to see if we can figure out how to use this. And this is a great reference to help us remember. So we'll be putting that into our notebook. So I've got a line here. In fact, I have markings on this line. I have A, B, C, D, E, all on one line. That means I can find the length of different line segments that are a part of this. So I could find the length of A, B, which means that I am going to measure between A and B so that I know how long that is. So if I line up my 0 and I know that it's not close there, we could even fold that over or cut that little bit off, but we could line it up so that we can measure that real well. If I go from A to B, remember B was this one right here. Maybe I should write them on top. So I have A, B, C, D, and then E was down here. I see that it's a little bit bigger than 1. okay, because here would be the 1, and I am actually one more section over, so I have 1 whole inch and one more little section, so that would be equal to 1 1/8 inches. So I would put 1 1/8 inch, and I can just make that just IN, abbreviate that IN for inch. Okay, so let's try BC. So that means for BC, I need to line up my 0 with the B, and I'm going to measure to C, which is right down here. So I lined up 0 with B. I've gone over 1, 2 inches, and then 2 more sections. So it'd be 2 2/8, but I don't say 2/8 because 2/8, remember, is the same thing as 1/4. So it would be 2 1/4 inch. Okay. Let's try BE. So we're going all the way from B all the way down to E. So I'll line up my 0 on B, and I've gone over all the way to 7 here, but then I've gone over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more sections. Whoops, let me show you there. 5 more sections, so we would have 7, and then 5 sections would be 5/8, because I'd go over those 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 7 5/8. I'm actually going to add one more little one here. I'm going to add one right here for F. So let's try DF. And so for DF, if I line up 0, right, I can see that it's definitely less than 1 inch. And so from D to F is less than 1. So I'm just going to have a fraction here, not 1 and something or 2 and something or whatever. I'm just going to have that fraction. And if I notice, I go over, it's kind of in between the 4/8, which is a half, and 5/8. But if I kind of line it up, maybe even use like a piece of paper to line it up, which I could have done for lining up the 0 too. So I could use that piece of paper to line up where the 0 is, and then I could line up where F is. It's closer to the 5/8, so we would put down just for that 5/8. An inch, of course, and I left that off there, so I'll add it in. Okay, so hopefully this explains how to use an inch ruler in our standard form of measurement, customary form of measurement, so that you can measure in inches up to 1/8 of an inch. Remember, use your Texas inch to help you out. That's all for now.